And now, our feature presentation.
The best
in the world
is right here, right now.
Whether you like it or don't like it, pal, learn to love it.
Ladies and gentlemen,
welcome.
All right, listen up.
Now it's our time to step forward. It's time to bring the NWA back into the spotlight.
I was thinking that it might be a good idea if you and I formed an alliance.
Let's get ready to rumble!
Attention, everyone. Welcome to the greatest wrestling program in the world. Ladies and gentlemen, can I please have your attention? Stop what you're doing and listen.
It's the Alliance Guys podcast with your hosts Kevin Frazier, DKM, and J-Cal.
What is up, NWA fam? This is the Alliance Guys podcast featuring two of the, I guess we have like 4 Alliance Guys really. 2 of the Alliance Guys here, and I'm talking about Mr. DKM. And of course, it's me, J-Cal, and we're here to talk NWA with you. We're here to talk National Wrestling Alliance, because that's what we do here at the Alliance Guys podcast. Remember, this is a presentation of Alliance-Wrestling.com, your number one source for news and information for the NWA. Mr. DKM, how are you doing today?
Well, let me tell you, I want everyone out there to know that in my real life I work with computers and data and stuff like that. And hours on end of mass data conversion is just as fun as it sounds.
All right. We've got
I need this, people. I need this.
He needs a break from reality. Now, first and foremost, I want to say what's up to the house, the fellas and ladies who are joining us in the chat. I see Kakushi is in the house. Mr. Dave Scooby is in the house. We've got Big Chris Dog in the house. James H. Jackson Jr. It's like a regular thing for us, guys. We do this every Thursday at 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 o'clock Pacific here on the West Coast. And we're here talking NWA. We recap NWA Power. We recap NWA Power Surge. We talk about the press conferences. We talk about the news and information from around the National Wrestling Alliance. And of course, we like to do that with you guys. We like to have you guys join us every Thursday, and we'll talk wrestling with you. So if you guys have comments, make sure to type them up, put them in the chat, and we'll respond to them. Kakushi says he heard a rumor that we may have a call-in show in the future, just like the old days. Is there any truth to that rumor? Yes, there's lots of truth to that rumor. We'll in the weeks to come, we will be looking towards trying to bring back more of a call show like we did back in the day. That seemed to be a lot of fun for a lot of people, and yeah, we would definitely be willing to give that a try if you guys would be up for that too. More comments in the section. I see Chris Drummond said Fightful has said that Impact and the NWA are on better terms. DKM, what are your thoughts on the NWA and Impact becoming friendly?
Who cares?
Right.
Maybe it'll work out for their women's pay-per-view, because, from what I've been hearing, things aren't going exactly the way they thought they were going to. So
we got the Pro Wrestling Zone podcast in the house. Mr. Rick Del Santo, friend of the show. Thank you for checking us out, Rick. We got Jimmy LB's in the house. Let's effing go, Jimmy. And again, we do appreciate y'all coming in and checking us out. So let's start the show. Let's talk about Power Surge episode number 4. Quite a different show than what we're used to seeing, Mr. DK. This was more of a tribute to Jocephus, kind of off the backs of the back for the Attack pay-per-view. I know that when the NWA returned, they kind of used that pay-per-view to pay homage to Jocephus by giving Aaron Stevens, Jocephus' former tag team partner, an opportunity to challenge for the 10 pounds of gold to face Nick Aldis. And in this, several weeks later, several months later, they have a show that's kind of just giving us a little bit more insight on Jocephus, his relationship with the NWA president and owner Billy Corgan, and as well that match that we saw from the pay-per-view. Before we get into the match, Mr. DKM, what did you think of that? What did you think of the show?
The show overall, or specifically the Jocephus part?
Both.
Overall, I was surprised that it was actually a pretty good show, and I think it's something they should model their future shows on. And we'll talk a little more detail after we kind of go through it. On the Jocephus part, look, it's no secret I was never a big fan of his, or at least the way they were using him to begin with. So, and of course there's a part of me that's always a little knowing how things ended between them. A little kind of, this seems odd. But, it delivered well. They didn't overdo it. So, I don't really have a lot of complaints about this episode.
Just as I'm kind of reading in the chat room and I'm screening what what our folks are saying, and Rick over at the PWZ podcast says it was a great show, really good presentation, and he would like to see more of that. And on a personal standpoint, we'll get into the show in just a second, but I thought this was a great format. I even tweeted at the NWA, and I said, hey, look, I know you guys aren't asking for suggestions, but to me, this was the best way to present this program. And going forward in the future, I think this would make for a great YouTube series, just the way it is. To give us 2 matches of somewhat known NWA talent, the up-and-comers or guys who are trying to find their way on the roster. Partner it with a match from the vault. The NWA had shot over, we had about, was it 20 episodes? Like 22 episodes of Power. Before they went on their hiatus, they had about 4 pay-per-views, some of them going over 3 hours, like the Crockett Cup and the 70th anniversary show. And they have a wealth of footage to use that they could stretch this content out. And again, if it's a YouTube exclusive, you're still drawing eyeballs into the product. You can push them towards pay-per-views, you can push them towards streaming. Essentially, this could be like just another infomercial like Power initially was, but instead of getting people to come to the TV tapings, you could get people to subscribe to the weekly show. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I'm going to be honest, I'm opposed to them charging for the weekly show. So the subscription based, all that does is limit who's going to watch it. And sure, there are always some people who, the NWA's got their own group of AEW style fan who will basically love anything and everything, and will pay for anything and everything. But the reality is, as far as growing an audience, you're never going to grow an audience with a paid subscription service. You're just not. And look, there's a reason some of the stuff started showing up on YouTube.
Yeah.
And I can't figure it out. It's probably because the numbers aren't doing what they need them to do. And so they need. I don't care if the show stays on Fight, as long as it's like ROH and everything else, where you basically you get in, you get to watch it, and then you buy their pay-per-views off of it. That's, hey, that's fine. But they do need a YouTube presence, and this is kind of an ideal thing for YouTube. But it's also a good setup for just a show in general. And I guess we'll go ahead and talk about it now. But, you know, Jay and I were talking off air, and I noted that if you're going to put on a 50-minute show, hour show, that here where you can, this is a good format. You basically had a veteran with a young guy working with them. That's what the young guys need. That's what veterans for. You put over the young guy and you teach them during that process. So we had that. Not a fan of three-way matches, but at least this one did do something a little bit different. But basically it gave Jordan Clearwater what he needed, which was to look good and to win. So you had your younger talent again here, having a chance to be showcased, having a chance to shine. So, you know, that was good. And then, like you said, we had this big event. So, like, if I were booking a show and I was only going to put 3 matches on the show, what I would do if I'm not pulling out something from the archive, then to me this is when you put a main event person in against a mid-card person. Yeah, you know probably who's going to win, but the match will look good and be competitive, and you can, you know, help that mid-card guy look good and get more people interested in them. And a chance to show off one of your titles also. Then if you're not going to do that, then you can have like 2 more matches. You can have a 4-match show. Again, the same style as what we saw in this one with 2 of them. Maybe a main event guy and an enhancement match. And then a couple of mid-carders for the TV title. You know, these are the type of things when you say, if you don't want to put a main event guy in, put in 2 competitive mid-card guy matches. You know, who's going to be the next person to face the TV champion. So just as far as format goes, I like that. I like especially that there were almost no interviews on this one. Now, in a real show, you would have to do some, and I do understand that. And you would want to, because you talk people into watching your show. You talk people into the door. That's part of being a professional wrestler. And so that's what you want out of them. So you have to give them the opportunity to put others over in a verbal one. But in a show that's typically, you know, a quarter or less of wrestling time, it was nice to have a lot of, you know, primarily action in the show. So those are my thoughts, Jay.
So what I really liked about this show, and we'll get into it right now, it was simple. They kept it simple. It's something we've talked about for weeks that the NWA needs to do, is just keep things simple. And yes, you're right. I feel like there should have been maybe that one segment with Mae Valentine, you know, heart to heart, whatever. You know, that I think is part of the show. And then, of course, you know, the hallmark of Power Surge in the past has been about kind of recapping of what's already taken place, and there was absolutely none of that, which, again, I don't really have a problem with that, but I feel like going forward, you know, there needs to be some balance, right? Because this isn't an NWA Power episode, it's Power Surge, and so the point of Power Surge was always to kind of recap what's been happening. So the lack of it didn't hurt, because, again, this was kind of a tribute to Jocephus in some regards, but I certainly think it would have benefited from it. Now, this show, it was interesting. Like, if you guys watched the show on Fight, you could see that the logo graphic was a picture of Sal Rinauro and of our television champion, the Pope, which leads me to believe that maybe that was originally scheduled to be on this paper, or on this week's episode. But nevertheless, it was a fun show. This one featured some matches with, again, Marshe Rockett, who isn't a young guy by any stretch of the imagination, but still really hasn't got a footing within the National Wrestling Alliance, taking on Jermiah Plunkett, who Jermiah Plunkett is strictly enhancement. He hasn't had a victory since his time in the NWA in the modern era, but you can't take away from the fact that this is a guy who was a former NWA Southern Heavyweight Champion and held that title very proudly. Even had the opportunity to wrestle Satoshi Kojima for the 10 pounds of gold at NWA Saw. So you really want to tip your hat to Mr. Plunkett for what he's done in the past. Unfortunately, this wasn't the night, and Marshe got the victory. But DK, what did you think about this matchup?
I thought it was a solid opener, and it, again, did what it was supposed to do. You're right, Plunkett's basically now just enhancement talent, but he's serving a role, and he's serving the role as the veteran. And this is how the young guys learn to work. And, work has a meaning outside of it's not a shoot.
Right.
You work together to make it look real. And so, that's Plunkett's role now. It's almost like he's a coach, but he's coaching in the ring during the show, and these guys need to learn from it. So hopefully they're taking advantage of that. Just a couple of comments here in the chat. See, James H. Jackson Jr. says it was an easy to digest episode.
Yes.
And Dave goes, would love for the NWA to do a few highlight reels on the newer talent. Let us know who they are and why they're here, which would also be a positive. And, gives these people a chance to grow. They got some young guys in there, and they got some guys that certainly have talent, even though they're younger. And so, again, it's getting them the right experience. So, hey, the match was a good, solid opener. It did what it needed to do. I mean, I can honestly say that's the best Mr. Rocket Boy has looked. I'm saying it kind of harshly, but, I mean, seriously. He's been in with, when he was in with Matt Cross, but they tend to be three-ways. So, him one-on-one with a veteran will look good. Put him in again with Matt Cross one-on-one. That'll look good.
It's one of those things, too, going back to what James H. Jackson said, was that making it easily digestible, right? We didn't have to have a triple threat match or some squirrely set of gimmicks to make this match happen. It was just a match. And when we suspend our beliefs about professional wrestling and we look at it, and when you buy into the pro wrestling, like, the idea is everyone's trying to get a victory because a victory leads to more and more opportunities, whether it be the television title or the national title. Everyone's gunning for the world title. Everyone wants to be world champion. And even with Jermiah Plunkett, who's like 0-6 in the NWA, his idea is he wants to be world champion. Marshe Rockett wants to be world champion. And whether they get there or not is entirely, up for debate. But these guys, I mean, the whole model should be we want to be a champion, so we're gonna fight till we get there, and that's all you need for a match. And just like what Fortification intensifies, he says, like, look, the lead up to every title defense in the NWA is so complicated. There are 5 titles for a 1-hour show. Just have someone wrestle for one of the lower titles every week. Why is this so hard? It shouldn't be. Fortification, I always think it says fornification. Fortification, it shouldn't be that hard. It should be very, very easy, and that's some of the that's some of the booking style for Mr. William Patrick Corgan. But I mean, it is what it is. I think they did a terrific job this week of keeping it simple. We're going to go back to that expression more than once, keeping it simple. So that brings us to the next match, the triple threat match. And I felt like, again, first and foremost, we saw a graduate from the Universal Heartthrobs wrestling school. First of all, I didn't know that was a legitimate thing, right? Because each week he's talking about Austin Idol is get me a wrestling job, Austin Idol. I want to be a bell keeper. I want to be a manager. I want to be an interviewer. And here he is. He finally has a student in a wrestling match. First of all, DK, what did you think of that?
Yes. Anyway.
All right, and then we got a student from the Nightmare School, which is Cody Rhodes' school, and we're talking about two students who are kind of coming into their own. Papa Jive and was it Rushman? That was his name.
You're asking me a name?
Yeah, I that was my mistake. And they're in the ring with our pal, our friend, the king of the Midas touch, Jordan Clearwater, who, I mean, he desperately needed this victory. He desperately needed to have a good outing because so far, I mean, he had the squash match with Paro, who absolutely ate his lunch, right? And then we saw him again in losing efforts to oh gosh, now I'm drawing a blank. We know we didn't get a match with he and Nick Aldis. They were supposed to have an exhibition match that never came to fruition. And then a couple weeks ago, he just laid down for Tyrus, following the plan, get paid church's money. So he just took the dive for Tyrus. So he desperately needed to come out and look good in this match. And I walked away from this match feeling very good about some of these guys. I felt Jordan Clearwater looked good. He hit that Midas touch. He finally hit his finishing move in the NWA. Freeman looked pretty good too. And I could see it where this guy might have a future in the world of professional wrestling. He's got a mullet very similar to Mr. Brian Pillman Jr. And even Papa Jive, I mean, I know it was more of a comedic act, but he looked pretty good in this match too. I mean, don't get me wrong, some of these guys were green, but it was more good than bad. What were your thoughts, DK?
Setting aside my dislike for triple threats, yeah, I mean, it was a good match. It was, you could tell it lacked a veteran, but again, this was given Clearwater's opportunity to shine, and I thought he looked good in the match. So, I mean, if you say that was the purpose of the match, was for Clearwater to look good, he did. And it's, dang well about time. He needs to be pushed and developed. So, I enjoyed it. They did kind of fall back on their need to have tension. Him and short guy outside.
Black G's.
Yeah, and there's a reason I was calling him short guy outside. And they have their little things. But see, when I first saw that happening, I can't believe they're going to blow it, because we all know that 99 times out of 100, when they start something like that, the third man in the ring comes up, schoolboys the guy, or Oklahoma rolls him, or whatever, and gets the pin on the one arguing with the manager or the person outside, or whatever the case was. But I liked that, Clearwater was basically like, I'm not going to win that way. The other guy comes in, he takes care of him, he finally hits a finisher on somebody, and he gets the pin his way. So, again, purpose of the match is to make Clearwater look good. They accomplished that, and it was entertaining enough. The one guy with the floral pattern on the bottom of his pajamas probably needs to get real wrestling gear, but outside of that, hey.
So, I mean, those were the two live matches, and again, those didn't necessarily fit in on maybe a regular episode of Power, and those matches might have even found their way onto the YouTube channel under the, the high voltage. But at the end of the day, they presented them on this Power Surge, and Power Surge is usually reserved for just a rewind show, just a recap show, and they put out some pretty good quality content, and then that built up to the NWA pop-up event that happened in January of 2019. It was their first pay-per-view of the year. The original idea was to do a lot of these pop-up shows. They ended up doing one, and they ended up using working with Tried and True Pro Wrestling. I mean, the card was basically built. The main event of the night, it was supposed to be James Storm challenging Nick Aldis for the 10 pounds of gold. Willie Mack defended against Matt Cross that night. Jazz, who was the woman champion at the time, she defended her title against Allie, who's now in AEW. There were no tag team champions yet, and we would get those decided later down the road, but they did make the announcement at that show that there would be a Crockett Cup 2019, and they had the War Kings on that card. And I mean, there was a lot of positive things about this show, but one of the biggest that kind of got the press looking at the NWA and kind of putting some eyeballs onto the show was the fact that they included David Arquette. Yes, the former WCW World Champion. Yes, the guy from the Scream movies. Yes, the actor turned wannabe pro wrestler, and he was in the ring with Jocephus, who is an enigma wrapped in a fortune cookie, tied in a box. I don't know that whole how to do that whole whatever. Moving on. Anyway, so you had these two. Yeah, thanks. I don't talk so well sometimes. And then so you had this very interesting dynamic. It was supposed to be Jocephus versus David Arquette one-on-one. And then over the course of the press conference, they turned it into a tag team match where Jocephus' tag team partner was the spiritual advisor. We all know her as the woman that had no hair. And David Arquette, his partner, ended up being Tim Storm, who in a similar fashion came out to support Sal Renaro in his match against the tag team champions. He came out here in support of David Arquette and Jocephus. And at the time, as the announcers would bring up, there was a lot of bad blood between Jocephus and Tim Storm. Some even equate the injury that Tim Storm suffered at the hands of Jocephus as one of the reasons why he was unable to retain his title in that match against Nick Aldis in CZW. So there's a bit of a history on the whole situation. And I felt like this was just the match from the pay-per-view. It was fine. It was fun. It was nothing spectacular, but it was a great look at a historic moment for the NWA. And again, having Jocephus, being able to see Jocephus in action one more time was kind of nice.
Yeah. I mean, not a fan of David Arquette. Do not like promoters who book him. Did not buy into the whole, I'm going to do it right this time. I mean, he was doing indie wrestling show because he wasn't happy. So it was fine, I guess, for what it was. I watched it for the sake of watching the show. It was kind of fun watching Jocephus get his head shaved. Oh, good old days. But I mean, if you're going to ask me, did you love that match? No. But I loved its inclusion on the show because that's what they created the show as a tribute to Jocephus. They showed what could arguably be his highest profile match that he ever had. And, it was wrestling in ring action. it wasn't bad wrestling in ring action. It's certainly much better than anything you probably see on any indie show out there. And it's probably better than 80% of what you'd see on any of the big boys television shows, which unfortunately that's a pretty low bar. Overall, I mean, I can tell you there would be a lot of things about this episode that I could sit there and go, oh, that's terrible. But no, it was the right episode, done the right way, putting the right people in, having the right type of matches, and doing something. And not just yammering and over complex, you can have a world title shot with me if you get 2 men and wrestle my 3 men and you win with, your left leg, pointing east, or, if you lose this match, you have, your punishment is you have to only wrestle here. That garbage. And it's garbage, trust me. So, and I mean, look, let's take off that. This is what the NWA needs to do. This type of show is what they need to produce. Push it out to about, this run ran 45, push it out to about 55. The talking segments were basically dominated by reviewing the history of the main event match that they showed. So, okay, I'll give them that. Get your guys and, either interview someone before they go in the ring, interview them after they come out of the ring. You can do 2 quick back-to-back interviews. They shouldn't be longer than a couple minutes. I love May, but I'm sorry, we don't need backstage interviews. And we need to find another purpose for her. And this is where they can have content if they get out of this exclusiveness with Fight. They could put out a show like this, type of Power Surge, on YouTube. I mean, he said perfectly, this is what a YouTube show should be. They can do sit-down interviews with May, on either as its own type of episode or in the Power Surge thing, where there's not really, going to be a lot of interviews if you're doing these type of matches. So, you could easily put in about 30 minutes of wrestling, 25 minutes of wrestling, 5 minutes of interviews, 5 or 10 minutes of interviews, and then like another 5 minutes with, May talking to somebody in a sit-down way. So they have the ability to put out content. They have the ability to put out good content. What did we say earlier? Keep it simple, sad, or stupid. KISS, KISS. Keep it simple.
So in the chat, I just want to bring up a few things. First of all, you got the ire of Mr. Mario Morales, who's questioning how could you bury his May Valentine. We actually are big fans of May on the show. We feel like, if I could speak for you, DK, I feel like sometimes May Valentine, with her, less is more. I love the heart-to-heart segment. I think that would be a fun feature, especially on the Power Surge. That could be an asset to the show going forward, where she could sit down with a superstar for 5 to 6 minutes, 5 to 7 minutes, and actually have something meaningful. But of course, I want that with somebody who's important, not a masked man who isn't going to say anything, just waste some time with it. And then some more of the comments. Jimmy LB says, we really don't. Good call, DKM. James H. Jackson said that I'd love to see something like AEW Dark, from on YouTube, where up-and-coming wrestlers get to have some quality matches shown on YouTube. You know, James H. Jackson, I'm pretty sure that's what initially they wanted to do with Circled Squared. And, of course, a lot of their plans kind of got crapped on at the beginning of COVID-19. What we're seeing is they're starting to put some things together. The High Voltage, that featured some match from guys who were a little bit lesser known. Again, I feel like they are trying to do different things, and they are trying to use YouTube in a little bit different way now. For almost 2 years, that's exclusively where you found NWA matches, and now you're getting those matches on Fight. So they're trying to do something different, but moving on. What would Luthez do? Says that he co-signs everything that you said, DKM. Reduce the commentary table while you're at it, which I think he means, trim some of the fat from there. I kind of like the commentary the way it is. I really do like Tim Storm in that position. I see what they're trying to do with Velvet Sky. I just think she needs more repetition. I don't think she's very good yet.
What are they trying to do with her?
They're trying to give you a woman's perspective on the wrestling. They're trying to be more inclusive.
Yeah, no. Honestly, that's one of those things where, again, if you can put out the content, and I realize I only got so much time to film in their basic mass tapings. So some of this would, of course, be easier if they start getting successful, if they start getting money in. You know, Billy Corgan's actually made the statement he would like to be in St. Louis more. So we might get to see, like, maybe some rotating, or either they'll move to St. Louis or maybe they'll rotate between Atlanta and St. Louis. And, if they could pick a third or fourth spot, that would be great too. Fort Worth. And if you're coming into an area only once every 4 months, you don't have to rely on people flying across the country to come see your show, your hardcore fans. You can build up a fan base in each area, and you're not going to be there to burn them out. And they can keep up with what's going on your show. So it would be great if they could get, 3 or 4 places they could rotate between, and, hopefully sell 200, 300, 400, 500 tickets, for a couple of days of tapings, with the odd pay-per-view thrown in once a quarter. Get the taping schedule down, be able to produce more content. And I'm not saying this isn't the way they're heading. It takes time. Everything takes time. Being able to say it is easy. Being able to actually get out there and do it and negotiate building leases and getting the equipment and everything like that, none of that's easy. So I don't want anyone to think I'm saying, oh, they just need to do this, blah, blah, blah. But I'm hoping that this is kind of a direction they're aiming for and looking at, and that they can do. Because, look, nobody wants NWA to be more successful than me. Not any of the crazy fanboys out there, not, anybody that's working for him, probably not even Billy himself. Because I've been following this product since the late 70s, and I've been a hardcore fan since 81. So I want success. I want a good product. I want a good show. And I'm seeing glimpses of it. I'm seeing hints at it. And I see that they can do it. This show is a perfect example that they can do things that would be, I think, very successful. Cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. How did you know that I'm actually Craig Classic? Anyway.
Well, you do have the Junior Heavyweight Championship, so...
I do. Several. And, but, that being said, what I'm trying to get out here is that I think we could be heading down a good path and I certainly hope you're heading down a good path. What are you thinking?
Well, so the minute I heard Billy Corgan in that the minute I heard William Patrick Corgan in that press conference say, if I had my druthers, which again, I hate that word, if I had my druthers, we would be at the chase a lot more frequently. In the chat, I forgot who said it. It was James H. Jackson. He said, Billy was on PW Insider recently doing an interview and hinted a second show from them is coming. Now, hear me out, because I don't know. I don't know. But they have started producing From the Chase, which is kind of like their new spin on the 10 Pounds of Gold series. And I don't know if that was a one-off or if this is going to be a race for the chase, the series that they're doing. I don't know if you want to call that a show or not. High Voltage has really just been one match that they kind of throw out there. So again, I don't want to call that a show in the same way that we call Power a show. And to be quite honest, I think Power works very well in the Georgia Public Broadcasting Studios. I don't know that I want to take Power out of the studios. And I know it sucks for you, DK, because Dallas to Atlanta isn't a short drive by any stretch of the imagination. But I feel like Power kind of feels at home in Atlanta, and it'll be weird to see it anywhere else, including in St. Louis. But what if they did do two separate shows? And I kind of talked about this a little bit on the pre-party, because they tape 4 days a month for about 2 months worth of content, right? So if they go to St. Louis and literally the first week of the month tape 4 shows, 2 months worth of shows there at the Race for the Chase and a pay-per-view, and then come back to Atlanta and do the same thing, they literally could make enough content to not only sustain an exclusive fight TV show called NWA Power. Maybe they could go locally in St. Louis and go on the antenna, be on a channel local to St. Louis, and have the chase, Wrestling from the Chase, paying homage to the show from the 50s and 60s that garnered so much attention for the NWA back in the day, and have it something separate, and then use matches from both to kind of produce content for their YouTube channel. To me, I feel like that's a slam dunk. And I don't know logistics. I don't know how expensive it is to run Power, but I know at one point I was told that to produce 1 hour of television, it's roughly about $10,000, and that was a high estimate. But if you're already putting in the work, I mean, you have the people in play, you're paying the talent, whether they're working on your show or not. If they're under contract, they're getting paid. So instead of paying them for 4 days worth of work, you're paying them for 8 days worth of work. I don't know. I just think that's a good idea. I think there would be an opportunity for the NWA to grow exponentially with 2 different shows. It'd give them an opportunity to showcase those titles a little bit better. It'd give the champ multiple places to work, and it would kind of bring a bigger fan base back to the NWA. There isn't a huge promotion right now in St. Louis. I know they have the World Legion Wrestling, they have Anarchy, but all of these promotions are, they're not at the same level as, say, the NWA.
Well, at the same level that the NWA could be at.
Sure. I mean, even right now, there's nobody in that area that's at their level right now. But I feel like regionally, the NWA could grow into something really big in St. Louis on the history and tradition of that Wrestling at the Chase. I mean, that's a historic landmark for the NWA. Sam Munchnick, building up that territory with Luthez. And then also when bringing in the history that Harley Race brought there. I mean, I really feel like they could do something exciting there.
Well, yeah, and they do. I'm going to disagree with you one spot, though. I have to go way back in the conversation.
Sorry, go.
They need to film Power wherever. Yes, Atlanta is nice, and that's kind of what we're used to. So what? If they have an opportunity to put on other shows, other places, and even, okay, we can talk about a second show but let's get the first show right, please. I mean, you know, I don't need 2 hours of what I've been getting recently, so let's focus a little bit here. Let's focus. Let's get power going wherever we film it.
Okay.
And let's get it in a solid place. And again, let's get fans back. Let's not depend. I mean, local fans, and by local fans, I mean the ability to go somewhere and pull in local people. Because, I mean, Jay, the first couple of tapings were primarily, I'm not talking about since COVID, I'm talking about the original set of tapings for Power. I mean, a bunch of people came from across the country to be there.
Yes, but let's...
And paid more for a ticket than the average person would pay for a ticket to be part of that experience.
And you're right, but let's not forget that Atlanta is in a metro area where, the boys that came out, the This Is Pro Wrestling boys, I mean, they literally drove from South Carolina to be there. You had people coming up from Florida to be there. You had people coming from Eastern Tennessee to be there. And a 3-hour drive for a wrestling show, I mean, isn't completely out of the realm of possibility. And I don't think you're asking too many people, like, that's too much.
It's not crazy, but as well as I know, and you could even tell on a TV show, that by the time they did the third set of tapings, the crowd was down.
Okay, that's fair.
But
they also filmed. Filmed those in December.
And a lot of people who you didn't go to the third set of tapings. A lot of people you knew didn't make it to the third set of tapings. Yeah, there are people who are close, but again, they're charging more than probably the average person is going to pay, especially for a TV taping.
Yeah. I mean, look, especially in Atlanta, right? Let's just put the microcosm right there. Dave Marquez is literally bringing wrestling to the stage one. What is it called? No. Oh, where WCW used to tape, where ECW is taped, where NXT is taped. He's bringing a championship wrestling from Atlanta and literally bringing some talents who used to be associated with the NWA, people who have never been in an NWA ring, and I think don't quote me on this, but I think admission is supposed to be free. I might be wrong. Center stage, thank you, Kikuchi. And if not free, I mean, it's going to be competitive. And, in Atlanta by itself, I mean, it is not the great state of Texas. It is not the Northeast. It is not Los Angeles. But in Atlanta, I mean, you've got a few indie promotions locally. And now you're, with the NWA and now with Championship Wrestling from Atlanta, there are a lot of competing eyeballs. But back to the point you were talking about with the lower attendance, they also filmed that around the holidays. They filmed that, I think it was early January.
Around the holidays used to be a big time for wrestling. Look, but again, that's the point. Around the holidays, people who travel from all over, you want a solid base of people from where you are putting on the show. If 80% of the people aren't there from where you put on the show, AEW drew 10,000 people and more, and 12,000, whatever, sometime, things like that. Before the pandemic hit, they were drawing 4,000 because not everybody could fly to every show.
Right.
And it was going down from there. Some of their shows that had been scheduled out were only drawing around 1,000. So you can't depend on the fanboy everywhere to keep coming to your show. You have to grow your fan base, and you have to grow a local fan base. That means even styles of wrestling have to match up to where you're going.
I don't think we disagree on that. I don't think we disagree on that at all. I think you're right. They're going to whatever they do, they need to kind of build it. So if they are going to stay in Atlanta, or if they are going to go to this rotating schedule, I mean, someone in my on the live chat during the pre-party mentioned that Impact was looking to move its taping to Las Vegas on a permanent basis, and they would be filming their shows maybe at Sam's Town Live, where they had previously taped shows where Ring Warriors taped, where Ring of Honor has taped content there as well, freeing up that the studio that they use in Tennessee, which from my understanding, that's where they initially wanted to tape the NWA, was in that same studio that Impact is using in Tennessee. So it's really kind of I mean, look, there's options for the NWA. I mean, certainly there are options, and there are places they can go all across the world. Atlanta is a good choice. St. Louis, I think, is a great choice because, again, that rich history. I don't see them going to Texas just because then they'd have to compete with SWE.
Well, there's probably some truth about that. I can't get SWE to come to Fort Worth. They'll only go to Irving. Which, if anyone knew the Metroplex and how it's divided into quarters, that's the most evil of the quarters. So, anyway, but they are going out to Lubbock. But, at some point, in their 20-year plan, I'm sure the idea is that, you would be running shows kind of across the nation. You wouldn't have to necessarily be taping shows across the nation, and you wouldn't necessarily be planning on drawing, WWE levels of fans across the nation. But if you could, run in some moderate-sized cities to large, and probably in the suburbs and the large, you could, if you can do something like that and put out a good product, no one's going to compete with WWE until it's sold to a corporate place that ruins it totally, completely, and thoroughly.
You mean it's not ruined now?
Well, it is for a wrestling fan. But at some point, they'll ruin it even for the sports entertainment fans.
They're bringing back Goldberg. Does that count?
No. I don't know. So that was a show. That was everything. What else is going on in the world of NWA or pro wrestling or anything out there, Jay?
Well, if you guys didn't see the press conference, I'll save you the time. There wasn't a lot of new information. Honestly, this felt more like a pep rally than a press conference. And although it's pretty cool to see that the city of St. Louis is excited about the return of the NWA, the Chase is doing everything they can to make this feel important and special. I mean, they even brought back the ring bell from the original race for the wrestling at the Chase to be a part of the ceremonies here. But the big news that we did get is that we know two things. We know that the winner of three things. First, they announced a women's invitational for the POWERRR pay-per-view. Basically, they're going to bring in women from across the country, up-and-comers, lesser-known names who haven't had an opportunity to shine yet. They're going to compete, and the winner of this tournament not only will they receive a cup, but they will also have the opportunity to challenge the women's world champion the very next night at the 73rd anniversary pay-per-view. That's important, and that's kind of cool because it lends credence to why this is important, and they're giving somebody a lesser-known name an opportunity to be showcased in one of the higher profile matches for the NWA. I think that's really cool. I think it's also very classy that the NWA's first entrant was announced, and it's somebody who's a local in the St. Louis area. I mean, the host, the MC, even said where she went to high school at, which I thought was pretty funny. And I'm talking about, I want to make sure I get her name right. She wrestles as the Little Blue Dragon, Sishin, but they identified her by her name, Tooty Lynn. Now, Tooty Lynn has wrestled in St. Louis. I know she's been a part of I think it was Dynamo Pro. I think What Would Luthez Do probably knows a lot more about her. You can probably go to MissouriWrestlingRevival.com and check out some more matches where Tooty Lynn has been a part of. But I think it's very cool that they announced her as the first entrant. They didn't give us a big name or a well-known name. They gave us somebody who is fresh. And I think that's cool because it does a couple of things. Number one, it shows that the NWA is looking to find fresh faces. Look, NWA isn't the only one with a women's division. Besides the WWE and AEW and Impact, now you've got Ring of Honor. Now you've got MLW, and they're all competing for that same core group of women wrestlers that are out there. And somebody's going to win and somebody's going to lose. And Santana Garrett is going to go somewhere. And what's her name? The former world women's champion, Allison Kay. Allison Kay is going to go somewhere. Marty Bell's going to go somewhere. And so you're going to lose the opportunity to showcase the top women in the wrestling. So it's better, I think, that they identify some new faces and can kind of bring them into the fold. And then on top of that, there's still opportunity to showcase other matches on that card. In fact, that brings us to the survey that we posted at the beginning of the show. And this was the question that Mr. DKM brought early on last week. We were actually talking about it, and the survey was, would you like to see the NWA add another women's division championship, be it tag team titles or a secondary title? And right now, our audience with 14 votes, 64% of them said no, they would not want to see them bring a secondary belt into the women's division. DK, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I wouldn't want them to do that. You pointed out a lot of people are trying to start a women's division or make a serious women's division, and how can I be politically correct? Yeah, I probably can't be. There just aren't enough women out there right now with the right skill level to do it. And I think even by the tournament that the NWA has announced of up-and-comers for the pay-per-view they're doing, are they calling it Empowerment? Tell me, yes.
It's called Empower.
Empowered, okay. I knew it was some play on power. I couldn't remember what. But anyway, my point was, when it was first announced, Mickie James was basically inviting every woman out there, regardless of her contract status. And I think right now, as Triple H said, there's a reason we have contract statuses. And I think they were probably hoping to get some people from ROH. Well, guess what? ROH is trying to do a World Women's ROH Women's World Champion to replace their Women of Honor title.
Yeah.
And Allison Kay, if I remember correctly, is actually a part of that. And so... and I think the fact that they're announcing a young, up-and-comers thing is they're probably not getting the responses that they want. I'll probably end up with one or two names maybe from outside, but I don't know that they'll end up with many people from another promotion.
I mean, I'm just speculating here. I don't have any deep connections to the National Wrestling Alliance, but I do feel like there is an opportunity to have Deonna Purrazzo from Impact wrestle in the NWA. As pointed out earlier, the harshness between the NWA and Impact seems to be kind of fading away. I mean, they literally were able to somehow work out an agreement that Impact relinquished the contract of Kylie Ray, and she was able to sign with the NWA. I'm sure there was some negotiating that was going on there. So I feel like that's that maybe that could be an option. I know Jordan Grace, I believe she's a free agent currently. I could be mistaken. Anyone in the chat room who knows for sure could certainly fill us in on that. But if someone like Jordan Grace is available, again, she's not the end-all be-all when it comes to women's wrestling, but she certainly has a name value. And maybe a match between her and Camille. Could you imagine 2 powerhouses in the ring? I think that would make for a very interesting main event for the 73rd. But again, it's just it's all speculation. One of the things the NWA does that just really chaps my ass is that they hold those cards so close to the chest. We don't even know who's booked for the show yet outside of the Little Blue Dragon.
And I think there's a reason for it, and I think part of the reason is they don't. Unfortunately, because of the way they do their tapings, where they have a pay-per-view and then do tapings behind the pay-per-view to build to the next one, and let's be honest, they have people that aren't on contract that they play kind of a big role, and they can be picked up anywhere in the middle of a taping, slice boogie. And, hey, so it's that type of thing. Right now, the other promotions are being very aggressive about trying to pick people up and to keep people. And the NWA has not taken that outlook yet, to the best of my knowledge. And, there could be trouble.
Well, one of the things that Billy Corgan said during the press conference, and it was kind of a hallmark of what you'd hear Dave Lagana say, that they were a 70-year-old wrestling brand under ownership that's a startup company. And that was okay when they started in 2017 and 2018 and they were getting their feet wet, but now we're 3 years into it. And I know they're coming back from a pandemic that almost shut the doors completely for the NWA, but at this point in time, like, they need to start being... Huh?
They didn't handle the pandemic well.
No. And it took so long for them to pivot that I'm sure they lost I'm sure Billy personally lost a ton of money during the pandemic because he was paying people and not able to monetize what he was putting out there. And even like we discussed this a couple of times, they could have done these empty arena television tapings throughout the pandemic, and they just opted not to. In September, when they started working with Primetime Live, I mean, you're talking about a full 6 to 7 months where they had done nothing. I mean, they literally shut down the entire thing. So, yes, I know Billy lost money, but, from what we hear, from what Nick Aldis is so affectionately referring to, the deal that he struck with Fight TV that brought millions to the NWA, well, now it's time to start forking up some of that money. Right? Now's the time to start bringing in some talent, locking some people up, because you're right. We can't have this situation where you're building up a talent and then they get plucked from another wrestling promotion. That's not how you sustain this. You can't continue to do stuff like that.
Well, yeah. I mean, right now, who do we know is definitely going to be at the next set of tables?
We know.
And we can go like, well, the champions.
Yep.
Probably Trevor Murdoch. And probably Tyrus, because I doubt anyone's going to pluck him. Especially if they've been watching the NWA. And, and if they do, I know they'll book him better.
Oh, jeez.
Well, I'm sorry, but you can't sit there and look at Tyrus and go, he's been a success.
No. Nope.
And we're honest here. We honestly like the show we saw. We'd like to see future show, modeled around it. But I'm not going to sugarcoat the issues that they obviously have. I mean, right now, a guy that's been part of one of their storylines and causing all the friction with War Kings is currently now part of being managed by Conan with Danny Limelight as the third version of LAX in MLW. And I promise you that even if they're free to work indies, they probably aren't going to be working NWA.
Probably not. I know. I've spoken to Danny Limelight. Danny Limelight's been on the show lots of times. I'd consider him a friend of the show. I knew that his deal with AEW had expired, and he did have a deal, but they weren't going to pick him up right away, and so an opportunity came. I don't know if his contract status prohibits him from working from Championship Wrestling from Hollywood. I don't know that. I don't know if he's able to, Slice Boogie and he are part of the faction La Bodega in Hollywood, as part of the United Wrestling Network. They have the tag team titles. They use the Freebird rule. They can defend those belts in any 3 sets of those wrestlers, any combination they want to choose. As of right now, I don't know if they're able to go back and defend those belts. So it'll be interesting to see how it plays out. But, if Danny Limelight isn't back in Hollywood, I guarantee you Slice Boogie won't be back in the NWA. And, from a standpoint, I don't know what the relationship is with Court Bauer and Billy Corgan. I know that Court Bauer had some issues with Dave Lagana. And so it'll be interesting to see if there is some sort of working agreement. Because, how cool would it be? How cool would it be if they could work some sort of working relationship with MLW? But you're right. The fact that Boogie got poached when he was such a central figure in a feud that they were doing with the tag team War Kings, it just all down the drain, I guess.
Well, look, and here's the problem with working agreements. We don't need them. They don't work. There were working agreements with ROH, and both times it didn't, ROH fans didn't give a damn about the NWA activity that was going on there. And, NWA fans are like, oh boy, we're working with ROH. It's like, come on. Nobody out there is saying we need to work with the NWA. Nobody. MLW isn't going, hey, what would be really great for us is to work with the NWA. ROH, no. Impact will work with anybody because they're shows the shit. They can't even bring AEW fans over to watch Kenny Omega. So, if you can't bring over the 400,000 hardcore AEW fans that were watching it late on Friday night, then just how bad do you have to be? And so, let's stop worrying about working agreements. Now, there could be a thing of sharing some undercard talent, but at some point when you start developing someone to be something, you want them for you until the fans are tired of them, and then you can send them away.
Yeah.
But other than that, the last actual Power episode, not the Power Surge episode, everybody was excited because Homicide returned. Homicide's back. We get Homicide. Homicide is now currently one half the ROH World Tag Team Champions.
That's funny because James H. Jackson just literally posted that, typed it up right before you said it. It's like you guys are sharing the same brain tonight.
Probably. And, speaking of, guess who's the other half of the ROH World Tag Team Champions?
Yep.
Chris Dixon, remember when he was going to face Mike Bennett, who's also in ROH, for the United Wrestling Network World Heavyweight title? Hey, Dave, buddy, I love you. go put that belt in a vault, retire the idea of ever crowning champion, and just go with what you got to do.
Mr. Dave Scooby said the NWA is a launch pad for some talent and a landing pad for others. And I look, man, let's talk about what the NWA's done right. Okay, they were able to take the Pope, who was basically out of wrestling. I mean, I know he's still working some indies, but he was done with Impact. The WWE never really gave him the right opportunity, and now he's genuinely a guy who every week I want to see wrestle. Every single week I want to see the Pope in the ring. Let's talk about Jay the God, JTG. He was in a silly tag team in the WWE. Again, I know he had dates on indies, but he really never got much traction outside of the WWE. And now he's kind of looked at as one of the potentially big stars going forward with the NWA. They took Trevor Murdoch, who again was almost out of wrestling completely, and now he's one of the top challengers to Nick Aldis's title. I mean, they have collected.
Aldis was almost out of wrestling.
Huh?
Aldis was almost out of wrestling.
Yeah.
I mean, basically, he was the Global Force World Champion for ever and a day since they never put on shows. And he went to Impact whenever they were going to partner with Jeff. He immediately dropped the title, first time he defended it. And they had no plans to use him, and I think he had no plans on sticking around, and that was it. And I think he was basically done at that point. But when Billy and Dave Lagana's first choice for world champion got sucked back into the WWE.
First two choices.
Well, I know most people only know about one now. So I wasn't going to bring up the fact that there were two and rumor has it even three. But still, it's just, they have brought to life some people's careers, and so I don't want to downplay that. And I do like all the wrestling. It's the only thing I dislike is the booking.
Yeah.
and
yeah.
And primarily, I hate to say this, but I don't. You can tell Billy Corgan, probably spent too much time around Impact and picked up some bad habits there. And then just probably has his own set of bad habits. But it's just, they have, and maybe that's what the frustrating part is, because they have so much potential. I mean, when you just look at it, you sit there and go, wow, they have the potential to really put out an excellent product and grab lapsed fans. And it's like, you worry because it's like they don't seem to take advantage of it. I see where Willie just posted, Eli Drake should have been NWA World Heavyweight Champion. And he's probably right, he should have. But more importantly, there should have at least been that match.
Absolutely. And that's, our buddy Kevin says it every single time, that was the match that they should have booked, and they just weren't able to get to it. And I can't just say that it's look, they had to deal with the same global pandemic that everyone else had to deal with. Unfortunately, it rocked them harder than most of the other wrestling promotions. And it's kind of hard to say what would have happened. But if you go back in time, they were building up to a match between Marty Scurll versus Nick Aldis #2 at Crockett Cup 2020. Which
they lucked out that didn't happen.
Oh yeah, that would have been awful for them. If Marty Scurll was the world champion during that time when the Me Too movement stepped out, the speaking out movement for wrestling on Twitter, it would have rocked the NWA harder than it already got rocked during the global pandemic. And then there would have been something with the tag teams. Maybe we would have seen the wild cards regain those tag titles. Maybe we would have seen a whole new tag team. I mean, they were talking about putting Ricky Starks and Zicky Dice as a tag team. So things could have gotten really weird, and it could have been good. It could have been awful, but it just who's to say what would have happened, right? These are all just assumption guesses based on what we've heard, but as Roswell says right there, can you imagine the mic time between Drake and Aldis? Wow, we missed something there. I think absolutely. We totally missed out on that.
Hey, because I haven't been paying attention, I'm actually going to go through some of these chats here because we're way behind on them. So let's just see what some of our beloved fans have to say. So, James H. Jackson Jr., which you're just going to be called James from here on out, says they say it'll become an annual thing, which I think he's talking about the tournament.
Yeah, the women's
where
cup.
The winner will be, the women's cup, and then the challenger will get a shot at the World Women's Championship. Cuckoo for Cocoa Puff says, sounds to me like the multi-promotional women's event's falling through. Kind of address that a little bit. James goes, ROH has their big tournament coming up this summer. They announced Chilpa Green is in with ROH. So, another name is probably off the book there for the NWA. Poll closed. Willie, NWA POWERRR should do matches in Norfolk, Virginia, Houston, Texas. Houston, Texas would actually be a good option, too. SoCal, Chicago, Illinois, which actually isn't Billy from somewhere up there in Chicago. It seems like he should be able to get a good deal.
Yeah, Chicago.
Orlando or Miami, Florida. Yeah, I think there's too much wrestling in Florida right now. The fans there might be burnt out, but in a year or two that might work. New Orleans. Louisiana's a hard place because they still have to be licensed and get licensed. I don't have anything against that, but I see why some places don't go to Louisiana because it's not an easy place. Fortification, or as J39 keeps reading it, fortification. No more belt, stop. Cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs, WWE has the end, which I don't know what that was in reference to. Probably something I forgot that one of us said. Roswell claps. Lions blog said something. I hope they bring Debbie Blanco. Bring in Debbie Blanco. Fortification, 6 belts would mean 1 title for every 10 minutes of power. Just where we don't see them. Dave Scooby says build up the division to make it worthy of another belt, and I do think that's the plan. I don't think that Mickie James was saying, "Oh, we're going to add all these belts." I think she was saying that they would like to reach a point where the women have something. It was something that would make it more attractive, because basically in almost every promotion right now, with 2 exceptions, there's 1 title for the women to go after. I think Impact has tag team champions again, and of course WWE has more women's titles than you can shake a rock at. But she pointed out how in the past there was always just like basically a title for women, and so I think that's what she was trying to say, is that they need to build the division, get people in, and at least, and then give them something to go for that's more than just, 1 shot. Let's see. Cuckoo says WWE has the best women's roster. Impact has a very good one. No one else has a capable women's division. I'm not going to disagree with you there. Willie Bones says bring back territory wrestling. The NWA won't do that as long as it's under Billy, and probably never will again, honestly. But that being said, that doesn't mean that you can't do things like work out agreements with like local promoters to do basically like the show. People don't realize that back in the day, World Class basically ran the Dallas-Fort Worth area, and any shows that took place out of the basic Dallas-Fort Worth area, it was local promoters. They would just call the office and say, hey, we're putting on a show, we'd like some talent, and then, Gary Hart or what's his name, Mantell, Johnny Brother, Ken Mantell, whoever the booker was, would basically put together a small show and send it to them. And they take like 40% of the gate.
Well, that's all.
And let's see, anything else? Is DKM becoming a woman wrestling hater like J-Cow? Maybe. Norland Grace is in the UK wrestling for E. Just kidding, when Henry Rusty over there from Cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. Let's see. He also points out that MLW picked up Matt Cross, and AEW cherry picked many wrestlers who got highlighted in NWA. That is true. Some of them they already had their eyes on, to be completely honest. Somebody in the chat on the Power Surge was making it sound like Ricky Starks got picked because he had been seen on NWA. Ricky Starks was known by all the same people who knew Sammy Guevara. There's a reason that it was kind of a delayed picking there. James says, I feel if they had big names for the women's pay-per-view, they'd be using them to sell the upcoming pay-per-view buys, which means they probably don't have them, which I'm basically in agreement with what you're saying there. Mickey James actually said something interesting on Twitter. Someone out and out asked her why would their first announcement basically be somebody nobody knew instead of a big name? And her response was kind of funny. It was something to the effect of, I want your opinion on this, Jay. It was something to the effect of, well, anybody can do that. That's why we decided to go the opposite direction.
Well, I mean, I think right there, that's her trying to I don't know, soften the blow. I think whatever women they have to announce, first of all, you got to build up to it, right? Now, if they would have dropped with the very first name, let's say it's Deonna Purrazzo defending the Impact Women's Championship. If that was the first name they dropped, that would have been huge news. All the wrestling websites would be talking about it. However, what is going to live up to that with any of the other announcements? What other name would rival that? Tessa Blanchard? Maybe? That's it.
But then the question is, if you're going to center around that, do you need to outdo yourself with each announcement? I don't know that you need to.
No, but if you announce on the very first name, the very first name is the biggest draw for the pay-per-view, everything after that, for the fans' perspective, is going to be a letdown.
Okay, well, who do you think they could name that would be in the middle?
Allison Kay?
Yeah, but she's doing ROH. She probably isn't going to be part of this.
Santana Garrett?
Okay. So, but you got to be able to have and that's the question. So, do they have Santana Garrett?
Yeah, I mean, again, we don't really know, but look, we could assume that the women of the NWA currently are going to be involved. So, Melina, right? Genocide is on the poster, for crying out loud. I would imagine that we're gonna get Taryn Terrell involved, which I like that. Maybe Lady Frost. I'm not sure. She's appeared on Impact. And now I don't know what her contractual status is. She said on Twitter, I even asked her on Twitter, she said no door is shut, which means I guess she could work anywhere.
Probably. The AEW does have, I can't remember what they call it, but they have this middle contract, which is basically, we'll pay you for your appearances so much, and we should be your number one priority, but go work elsewhere. That type of thing. And Oh, let's see. Cuckoo says it's the fourth version of LAX, so I missed one somewhere in through there. Oh, he names them. All right. Anything else? ROH is spending to retain. Hey, look, ROH, Impact, they're backed by major companies. So I understand that they have money in a way that Billy doesn't, but MLW, I'm not 100% sure what their funding source is. Our friend Jaden had suggested to us that, he'd probably get sponsorship deals for some of his shows over a period of time. But, still, he's signing people, he's locking them up. So, and they did stuff. They did empty arena shows. They were good empty arena shows, but they did empty arena shows. And so, I mean, there is the possibility that the NWA should have done more during the pandemic. Hello. Eli Drake for the world champion, which we talked about. Dave Scooby, just tell a good story. Hey, I see a munchkin. So Rosville says use NWA Power Surge better fit in more matches, allow more women's matches. Then they can work on a secondary title. Doesn't call for some tag teams. Katushi points out something that Jay was talking about. In their first draft, they picked Davey Richards, and then nobody else was on that level. But of course, we all know that first round draft picks are the higher people. So it'll be. Someone's asking if Marty Bell's available. I have no idea. That's Craig asked that question.
Well, and like again, the problem with the whole idea is contract statuses are important. We can't speak for what every person who signed, what their ability to wrestle or not wrestle is. Like again, if you
want to.
Yeah, I mean, like Marty Bell, as far as I know, she's an unrestricted free agent, but she could just as well be working for MLW or Ring of Honor like that. And until the NWA could lock up people under contract, that's not going to. This is going to be a continuing problem for him. Kikuchi mentioned Casey Carlisle, who is a former NWA Women's World Champion, and I'm sure she would love to be a part of this pay-per-view. I don't know that she moves the needle as much as some of the other names, but if tomorrow Ring of Honor offers her a deal, work the NWA pay-per-view or go take a deal to go work for Ring of Honor, it's the smart business decision to go get that contract. So again, there's always going to be that issue of until they're able to lock these people up, all these wrestlers up, it's going to continue to be a difficult task. I do appreciate you going through there and reading those comments, DK, because that's one of the best things that our crowd has, is we have such great interaction. There's so much good content coming from the live chat. It's part of what makes this show so much fun that we do every Thursday nights here on YouTube and on Twitch.tv, the Alliance blog. And we do really appreciate you guys being a part of the show every week. Now, DK, last week you had some questions that you wanted to ask, and I wanted to ask, are there more questions? Do you have a second round of these questions for this week?
Well, for this week, some questions would be, since they announced that Camille is defending her title on 73rd anniversary against the winner of the Women's Cup or whatever, do you want to see her on the women's pay-per-view? Should she have a match there? Should she defend the title there?
Now, are you asking me this question, or is this for next week, or what are we doing?
I'm asking you this question right now and anybody in the chat who wants to answer. So right now, you guys can answer this.
Okay, so, and this is a big if, right? Because I keep saying Deonna Purrazzo, but I have no idea if she's going to be able to do this, right? I have no idea if she's going to be able to show up. Now, if you go on Twitter and you see Ian Riccoboni, am I saying his name right? Ian Riccoboni, the announcer for Ring of Honor.
That's right, yeah.
He's kind of alluded to maybe having a crossover with some of the Ring of Honor women coming to the NWA, but I mean, this is just Twitter talk so far. And Deonna Purrazzo mentioned having an open challenge herself in Impact. So there's people speculating that she could be part of this show, that she has the opportunity to do that. So if you were going to have, and again, I just keep going back to that name, Deonna Purrazzo, your Impact Women's Champion, I know it's an NWA pay-per-view, but if you put that show on, you put that match on that show, and don't have Camille in the main event, don't have Camille defend that title, it does feel kind of weird to not have the NWA World's Women's Champion defend, because she's defending the next night on the 73rd anniversary show, but it certainly would give the opportunity to spotlight someone who you think is a great champion in Deonna Purrazzo, and perhaps maybe Thunder Rosa, perhaps maybe Serena Deeb, perhaps maybe Kylie Ray. A lot of options that you could put who are women that are NWA wrestlers.
Okay. Now that would lead me to my second question, which would be, if you get a name for this show that's not going to stick around, how does that make the NWA look if you're more dependent on wrestlers from outside your promotion than people that you're than people who are currently in your promotion? Is there a danger of saying, yes, the best are coming to this pay-per-view, but hey, they're not actually our wrestlers?
Well, I mean, it kind of... That's a great question. I think ideally you're going to showcase your talents throughout the show, but if you're bringing in a big name, and again, I've said Deonna Purrazzo about 100 times already, Jordan Grace or Tessa Blanchard, right? A big name that's not exactly connected to the NWA. I think what it says to the audience, to the fans, are like, look, we're looking for the top. We're looking for the best. And even if that best means that they're not under our contract, I mean, that's what Mickey stated. You know, I don't care what your contract status is. We're looking for the best talent. So it would kind of play to what her vision is as the executive producer. But at the same time, you're right. I think it's a little disheartening if I'm the women's division, if I'm Genocide, or if I'm Thunder Rosa or Kylie Ray or Taryn Terrell, for them to pick that draw outside of the NWA. I think that could be a little cumbersome and a little bit disheartening, disenfranchising to the current talent that are on the roster. But at the same time, like, the responsibility is to sell pay-per-view, is to sell tickets, is to sell, pay-per-view buys. So I think you're going to want to go with as big of a name as you can get.
Because, and along that line, does it hurt you if you put, since you like Deonna Purrazzo's name, if we bring her in and she defends the Impact title against Genocide, I mean, she's going to win. So, Genocide put in a good match against Camille. Should have to put in an equally good match against Deonna, which I'm not saying wouldn't happen, but in the end she's going to lose again. So, does that help or does that hurt, or does it not make a difference? And there's an argument that it doesn't make a difference.
Yeah, I'm kind of leaning towards that it doesn't make a difference because Genocide isn't the main event for the women's division, but she's identified as an NWA talent that's still growing as a performer, as a wrestler. So I feel like getting an opportunity to face the best that Impact has isn't necessarily going to hurt her value. Now, I like what Dave Scooby just suggested, and I'm going to jump to that. Craig also likes that idea. Have Jazz confront Camille for the Burke, the title she never lost. And Jazz could give Camille a rub in a match at Empower. And the way that's even better is Jazz is already semi-retired, mostly retired anyways. And she's also one of the producers for the NWA. So in that agent role, I mean, this could be a really good match where she kind of helps put Camille over. And think of it that way, having a victory over Thunder Rosa, winning the belt over Serena Deep, and then having a victory over Jazz really would solidify her as a big deal.
All right. Now here's the question for next week. All right.
Yeah. Everyone write this down. You'll be
write that down. Yeah, we'll probably post it on Discord too.
Yeah.
So Jay will post the Discord link somewhere.
It's actually in the it's on the description. You could go to any of our social media pages, but Discord is right there underneath the Twitch page. So check it out.
And don't forget to click like and subscribe and hit the little bell notification thing. That being said, our question for next week. If at the end of the storyline with Murdoch, we're going to assume that Aldous is still going to be champion, probably. If he drops the title, we're going to assume he's probably going to win it back.
Okay.
So, I mean, I think that's a safe bet. It may not happen, but we're going to go with safe bet. So, who should be the next major challenger for Nick Aldis?
I need clarification.
Okay, I'll give you some examples. So we're going to assume that Nick Aldis comes out of this storyline with Murdoch, still the NWA World Champion, or once again the NWA World Champion. So over the next week, because once we're done with probably the 73rd, we'll probably move to new storylines. So who should be the next person they build up to face Nick Aldis? And some examples could be, don't answer the question, some examples could be Pope, Tom Latimer, JTG, Camille? No, okay, not Camille. Somebody that's not currently in the NWA. Maybe there's some free agent that would be realistic.
Braun Strowman. Braun Strowman.
Yeah, that's realistic. And but you try to keep, more somebody that's in there, or somebody who is actually likely to, be in the NWA for a while. Now, I'm not saying this person has to win the belt, but who's somebody who they should be building up to challenge the belt? So, save it for next week.
And that's going to do it for us because, I thought with Kevin not being here, we would be, closer to that hour mark, and we still went to the whole hour 45. So we're going to wrap it up here, guys.
Well, we're here.
Well, I love to hear myself talk, so that's why. But I just want to say thanks again to the audience who joins us. I don't think of you guys as fans. I think of you guys as friends. I really appreciate you being here each and every week. And we're here to talk NWA. And yes, we sometimes highlight the negatives, but we also highlight the positives. DK and I were both very happy with this week's presentation of Power Surge, and we hope that next week when the Championship Series kicks off, that we're going to see some really fun and interesting things. But until then, we have to get there to get there. So first and foremost, DKM, if they can follow you on social media, if they want to follow you, I'm sure they do. How do they do it?
Well, if they want to follow me, they might think about getting some deep, dark psychiatric help. But if you do, you can follow me at DKMFWTX on Twitter, where I've actually recently done more sharing and occasionally actual tweets of my own.
I know you can find Kevin Douglas, Kevin Frazier, Kevin Lee Frazier. Is that it? Man.
Yeah, sure.
Sorry, Kev. You got to be on the show to get your plugs in. Modern Day Hero 24/7, something like that. Anyways, I'm Jay Cal. You can follow me at the Alliance blog on all social medias. That's Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok. I'm getting more active on TikTok. We're trying to put out some more fun stuff on there as well. Not just dad jokes, but some wrestling-related content. So make sure you check that out. Like DKM said earlier, if you like the show, you hit that thumbs up, subscribe, ring the bell so you get notifications each and every week. Ron, notifications. And make sure you get those notifications so you can join us and be part of the show. Again, the best part of the show is you guys coming in here and talking wrestling with your good old pals over here. So we do appreciate you being here. If you want to monetarily support the podcast, you can get these cool Alliance hats. There's t-shirts and more at the merch section. Again, link is in the description. So if you're interested in helping to support the podcast, make sure you get a hat, get a t-shirt, and I guess that's going to do it. We'll be back here on Tuesday. I will be here Tuesday. DKM will probably not be here on Tuesday, but we'll be here to get you ready for the NWA Power with the pre-party with J Cal, and that kicks off at 5 p.m. Eastern, 2 o'clock Pacific. And then, of course, we'll be here next Thursday, hopefully at full strength for the Alliance Guys podcast with my pals Kevin and DKM, and that kicks off at 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 o'clock Pacific. Guys, you're the best. Appreciate you guys being with us. We'll see you next week. Hope you enjoyed the show. If you have any comments too, we have that Discord server. Jump on it. Be a part of that community as well. And hopefully we can all just enjoy this NWA together as a group of cool dudes and dudettes. But until next time, see you at the matches.